week is it? Hi, hello, how are you? If you're new here, welcome. My name is Alex. It's so great to have you here. And if you're coming back, we're best friends now. You already know how this goes. If we're already best friends, then you already know that I do love Taylor. And I've been doing this series, I guess it's a series now because this is like my 4th video like this, where I recommend books based on new albums that have been released. And right now it's Thursday. What day of the week is it? It's Friday. Right now it's Friday, the 21st of October, and at midnight, Taylor dropped Midnights. So, I was up late last night because I had to listen to the album at midnight, obviously. And then I listened to it a couple of times, wrote down some words that I felt related to the 5 things that Taylor said keep her up at midnight, as well as how I felt while listening to this album. And I curated this book list for you guys. So a lot of this music, I feel like it was about being sad in the middle of the night, plotting ways that you could do better and be better. It was also like, you know, when you're having a conversation in your head when you're in the shower and it's like you're thinking of what you're going to say, and like it's just such a good conversation and like you really got that person speechless. It was also like sparkly and summery in some ways. Like it was very pure pop Taylor, which I loved. It was also about like figuring things out. It was very lyrical in the way that her last 2 albums were, but it was also pretty dark in my opinion, in a way that she hasn't accessed since Red. I don't know. Like it's just, you know, I'm so bad at describing these things. Anyway, I have a set of books that I feel like fit well for this album. I feel like it fits the different themes of the 13 songs that Taylor put in Midnights. So I'm just gonna recommend them to you. So the first one that I have on here is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is immediately what I thought of when I listened to Questions and when I listened to Bejeweled, because it's very razzle-dazzle, it's very glamorous, but it's also a little bit gay, if we're being honest. So I thought 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo makes sense because it's also about like what could have been, which is one of the things that kept Taylor up at midnight, because it's like, oh, like if Evelyn had done things differently, how would have things worked out for her and Celia? Would their relationship have been different? Would they have been happier? Would they have been together longer? Like, how would that relationship have played out if XYZ didn't happen, or if ABC did happen? You know what I mean? In that sparkly, like glamorous sense, it fit, as well as that like what if sense, it fit. And then for like the lyrical dark aspects of this novel, I wanted to recommend a horror novel, which might seem a little bit strange, but bear with me. So I'm going to recommend Tear by Erica McKean. I mentioned this in my last video, and basically, like, this is one of the most lyrically dark novels that I've read because it is classically a horror novel. However, it's written with such like beauty and prose that you're just amazed at the writing while equally being scared. And this novel starts out with a lot of discomfort, a lot of like, am I real? Like, is this happening? Am I hearing things? Or are you also hearing that thing? Which I feel like plays a lot into Taylor's songs in this album, that where she talks about like her depressive behaviors and the ways that she stays up at night wondering about things and self-loathing and all that. So I feel like Frances, the character, really embodies depression. Like, she personifies depression. Brilliant novel. I think it's excellent, and I honestly think Taylor would like it. So Taylor, if you're watching, check this out. This album was about women being badass, especially vigilante shit. And it's all about like figuring yourself out, doing things for yourself, not for other people, recognizing where you've been wrong and trying to better yourself for that. And I wanted to recommend a novel all about badass women, and that's The Priory of the Orange Tree. Will I ever stop talking about this book? Absolutely not. All of you have to read it, and I will not shut up until I know you have all read this. I keep recommending this to everyone and anyone that will listen. I know some of you are reading this for the trick-or-tbr readathon. I hope you're actually going to do that because this book is excellent. It's long. Yes, she is girthy, but she is also excellent, and there's a reason she is so long. There's so many characters and so many plots in this book that the stories are all weaved together, and it creates such an adventure. But there's also like deep romance, like sapphic romance, and there are also like women that ride dragons and save the world, you know, like it's women being their own knights in shining armor, which I think a lot of the songs in this album has. So it's like her self-loathing, her wondering where she went wrong and how she could have done better, as well as like falling apart. It's also about falling in love, not only with other people, but with yourself, as well as like, you know, getting that revenge. So I feel like it is a high fantasy, and it just makes sense with this album. If you disagree, you're wrong, objectively. Then I want to recommend a graphic novel that I read recently and I really, really liked, and that's Skim by the sisters Mariko Tamaki and Jillian Tamaki. This is really good. I really enjoyed this. I know people have conflicting feelings about this. I did too, but in the end, I really loved it. I buddy read this with Ali, which was super, super fun. I'll link her channel down below. And this is basically about this young girl, Kim, her friends call her Skim, and she's in this like all-girls private school in Toronto. That's my city. And she is depressed. And a lot of sad stuff happens. This is very dark. It deals with a lot of conflicting themes about self and about how we appear to others versus how we actually feel. There's an inappropriate like teacher-student relationship. There are queer relationships. There's witchy stuff that goes on. Lots of trigger warnings, so check those before. But I feel like there were a lot of aspects of Midnights that we see in Skim. The only thing negative I'm going to say about this is I wish there was more of it. I feel like they could have elaborated on Skim's story a lot more in the different aspects. There were some relationships that I wanted to see develop further and see where they went. This is a really good reflection of Midnights, to be honest. And then for another self-loathing, self-reflecting type book, I want to recommend Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. I read this with my friends Kat and Kirsty, and we had a really good time reading this. We're reading all the Didions together. I've been saying this for a while, we've read one, but we will continue. I have confidence in us. But Play It As It Lays is a lot about autonomy women are taken advantage of in the music industry, in the acting industry, whatever it may be, which I think Taylor reflects a lot in all of her albums, and you definitely hear it in this album as well. It's all about like her owning herself, if that makes sense. It's about her own music belonging to her career belonging to her understanding that the fact that she's made a name for herself isn't for everybody, but she's not going to make herself smaller just because that makes a man uncomfortable. You know, this deep sadness and reflection of what fame does to women is a really good representation of that, which you also see in Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but in a different perspective. Then I'm going to recommend a memoir, which is about a woman who falls apart after a relationship and goes on a journey of self-discovery. And that's Wild by Cheryl Strayed. This has been out for a really long time. There's a movie with Reese Witherspoon, right? She's in that movie, right? In this book, Cheryl she gets a divorce and she's like, okay, what the hell am I gonna do with my life now? I have no love, my mother's gone, my husband's leaving me. So she goes on a 3-month hike across the Pacific Crest Trail. And she makes a lot of mistakes along the way, but she does a lot of self-reflection and self-discovery, which is what this album is all about. And as much as she falls apart, she falls in love. I just think that this fits really well with Midnights. I don't know, it was one of the first books that came to mind while I was listening to this album. And of course, I'm going to recommend a Sally Rooney book because I am boring and repetitive, but it is what it is. I love Sally Rooney. I'm not gonna apologize for that. That's just, it is what it is, you know? This book, I think, reflects on Taylor looking at like mistakes she made when she was younger and things she wishes she could change, as well as like the relationships that she kept coming back to, not only because of their comfort, but because she really wanted to see where they would end. And that's Normal People by Sally Rooney. I don't know how much more I can say about that. Like, this is about relationships that fall apart, complex relationships. It's also about mental illness because like Connell does really struggle with that, as well as Marianne struggling with herself and how she wishes to be perceived by others and how she is perceived by others. So I think that fits Midnights pretty well. I don't know if any of these recommendations make sense to you or if my analysis of this album makes sense to you, but that's just my opinion. So yeah, that's it, that's all. I hope you liked this video. I hope you got some recommendations out of it. And I would love to hear your opinions on Taylor's album. I want to hear what your favorite song is, and I want to hear what books kept you up at midnight. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Like this video if you like this video, and I'll see you next time.